who own property there care so much about being there. They have a lived experience through generations of ownership, and they don't want to leave, and they feel like they have no other options. When I was approached to participate in the OMB hearing, I thought it was about three issues. Legal nonconforming status, which really is a property-specific issue. Whether something is actually development or not, which is a very difficult thing to drill down to. Or number three, whether any of these high-level policy areas and policies that are being applied to this area could be looked at in more detail and peeled back to reveal that perhaps there is some potential for some of these landowners. And that's the one thing I feel so strongly about. So recognizing where we are, understanding this is late in the game to be speaking about this, I had to come here and do this today. It was very important for me to do so. This is me on my own time being here speaking just to get this point across, and I believe it's something you could consider, and that's really the basis of my presentation.
Thank you, Mike. Questions? Councillor Brown, please.
Yes, through you, Mayor Luke. Just very quickly, Mike, the studies you referred to, what kind of cost, do you have any idea what you're looking at to do all that?
No, I don't know, and admittedly, it could be expensive, and perhaps that could be brought into a wider area to offset that, but I haven't done that. No.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in attendance wish to speak in opposition or neutral? Mr. Bradfield. Jack, I always believe in leaving the best to last. That's why I've kept you. The gray button, away you go.
Oh.
Not quite.
Now
okay, you're on.
There we go. Okay. I wanted to bring you up to date about the cremation project that I've been working on for several years. As you know, we went to the OMB, and the OMB, because I was not prepared with duplicate copies of written statements, I had everything on a CD. It was not accepted by the judge or the girl who was running the hearing. Anyways, so your lawyer represented Norfolk County very, very well and explained how the council had felt that it wasn't in the public interest felt by Norfolk County Council. Therefore, we were not allowed to proceed. We have since discontinued any development at the rifle range on First Ave, and we have found industrial land on 7 Boswell Drive or thereabouts, which is across from the coconut factory and behind Fanshawe College. The 3 things that I wanted to achieve on First Ave was to use microwave. I was going to cremate during the night to employ people, and I was going to offer a class through Fanshawe College for the cremation certificates. We talked to Fanshawe College because of this site being adjacent to Fanshawe College, and they have since taken that course. I had talked to Andy Newberry many years ago. They have since taken that course to Boral School and to George Brown School. So we have lost out on that one. The cremation process using microwave, once it appeared in the paper, ended up in Japan, and there's a Japanese maker of microwave, commercial microwaves in Japan that would like to take that over. So I have then washed my hands of the whole thing, and so to speak, I have thrown the torch to the Freeman family who own this property on Boswell Drive. I have spoken to Malahide Township, who are very much in favor of development and very much in favor of our process. So I'm looking at a site up there which doesn't have the cremation zoning on it at the present time, but it will have. To answer Peter Black's question about a computer-generated engineer's drawing, prior to approval, it's not necessary. Matt Vaughn over here, who had studied the zoning and everything that there was that the province puts out about cremation, he studied it, he hit the nail on the head, and then you guys throw all these extra things at us. Now, the other thing that is hampering us with cremation on Boswell Drive is we were here, and in the draft, it was 4 hectares that you would allow, or 19 acres, for a crematorium to be located in industrial land. The Freeman boys, I guess men, don't have that size of lot, but according to the provincial guidelines, it has to be 76 meters from the lot line of any other place. We do have the 76 acres, and we're asking Norfolk County's planners, if you want to have a crematorium here, to abide by the provincial guidelines that are set out, because they're the ones that license the whole thing. I myself am washing my hands of the whole thing. I've thrown the torch to Russ and said, here, see what you can do with it. So in the near future, probably by the end of March or April, there will be a proposal coming forward about cremation located in Norfolk County. Maybe you want it, maybe you don't. That's all I have to say. You have to decide whether you want it or not. We have the money behind us. We have the land here. We have everything, and I just don't have me.
Thank you, Jack. Any questions?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for the
Okay.
update on that. Thank you, sir. Anyone else who wishes to speak in neutral or against this this official plan amendment? I hear none. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Councillor Wells.
Is this the time where we could put forth a motion if we
Well, I
so
know,
desire
I'll
to?
tell- no, but I'll
Okay.
tell you what.
You tell me what. I'm used to you telling me what to do.
Are you going to be with us till 9 o'clock? Then you just relax. We'll get you home safely if I have to drive you myself.
Thank you.
What I have to do is close the public meeting, but before I get a motion, I had to ask if there were any other questions from council. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Through you to planning. As far as the residentials, the lots, now, are we able to do what we did with the industrial, where people give up some that they likely can't build on anyway, so that we can use them somewhere else?
We're not quite sure on that. That's why we're discussing it first, Mr. Mayor. The concept makes sense, but exactly how one does it is a bit of an issue, I think. I'll let Matt see if he's got anything more to add.
I'd like to, if Councilor Haid could clarify his question. I'm not quite sure what he's asking.
Okay, so we have an inventory of lots. Some of them I feel aren't buildable, but they're being used in our lot inventory. So similar to what we did with industrial land, pick up the phone, call some people, hey, you got a useless lot, you want to get rid of it? We get rid of it and allow someone else to build in a hamlet where it is useful. Is that possible?
I think it would be difficult to do. I'm not sure how. You're basically talking about swapping lots and then allowing no, I know, but a retraction in the hamlet boundary here, so we can add it there, in some other community. I think that's probably what the province would like to see, and since, if given their comments on the industry and that, but you've got 40 some odd hamlets. There's quite I forget the actual potential, but it's in the hundreds It's quite a bit of work to do. It may be that that perhaps a more detailed hamlet study may be required down the road, and then you can maybe look at it that way instead of. And if council wants to push the approval or approve this plan as soon as possible, that might be something that you could direct staff to do, is to do a more detailed hamlet study and growth study. It certainly should be done I think in the next few years when your development charge study, I think was the growth forecast study relating to that was done in 2014. It probably should be done soon or in 2019 at the latest. And maybe it could be attached as part of that study.
But so how I understand the industrial one worked, it was basically our staff picked up the phone and made a few phone calls, did some swapping deals, and voila, we were able to find some industrial land people didn't want. Is that correct?
That's basically correct, but there's a much smaller number of, we had about 11 properties or 12 properties that, so it's a more manageable number. I think with the hamlets, it's a much bigger study because just of the volume and the number of hamlets and that.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add, I sent out letters because we have no phone numbers, and then had to wait for people to contact me back. So it was a long process. One of them I didn't get to speak to until yesterday. So it is not a simple process to do. Matt has, and I also wanted to mention that I did speak with 8 of the potential property owners, and we only got a positive response from 3. So that kind of gives you an idea of the sort of response we might have if we went to that work. The other thing I wanted to mention was Matt has included policy in our official plan that says we need as a county to do more monitoring of our residential development and our growth, with the idea that when the next 5-year plan comes along, we'll have a better handle on things, knowing what we have and what has been built on. So I think if that is done, that will certainly aid in what Mr. Height is trying to speak to, which is our development and having a better handle on it.
Yes, there would be no harm in putting ads out to people. Like I know some farmers that have lots and they simply can't use them because the setbacks have taken them out because of the river beside them or something to that effect. So we advertise every week, I think, anyway. So thank you.
Councillor Brunton?
Very quickly through you to planning, there were a lot of speakers tonight. I'm just wondering, do you have recordings for every one of them in terms of their request? The reason I ask that, like the last speaker, for example, his comments are irrelevant. They're 5 years down the line, the way I look at it. To do if and when we do that, they want to have all these studies done. But I'm wondering about all the speakers tonight. Some of them are relevant, some of them are not, in my opinion. But how maybe I'm premature on that, Your Worship.
Well, I was going to get to that when I get the public meeting closed, but,
Okay.
but you're in order to ask that question.
Well, I was asking-
And if staff would like to respond to it,
Yeah, if they have that information, like
yeah,
have you
you're in order.
okay. Do you have those requests from the various individuals?
Through the mayor, I did my best to make notes, but I'm also able to look at the video and just recheck to make sure I've got everything correct. And then, of course, our clerk will have minutes.
Okay, so, all right, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and yeah, we had 11 speakers, and there was some good
Yeah.
relevant
Yeah.
material. Councillor Wells, would you like to move that we close this public meeting?
I would be pleasant to let it through.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Geisens, those in favor of closing the public meeting? We have now closed this public meeting. I'm not sure how we'll proceed here, but if you would bear with me for just a few seconds, if you would turn to page 89 in your agenda. I see 2 or 3 ways to proceed. We could, before we get into debate, we could look and go through these recommendations that are here, and actually specifically the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, which deal with Cortland urban area boundary, Delhi urban area, Norfolk Mall, and the recommendations from LPRCA. We also could then go to motions from the floor based on some of the requests tonight, and I have listed the 11 speakers. We could actually start with what we heard from the public first and then go to this recommendation. And I think, Mr., I'll look for you for direction. We could do them one at a time. How are your thoughts?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it might be better to do it one at a time and do them through
Yeah.
formal motions, simply because if we deal with the main motion first, our procedural bylaw prevents us to 2 amendments to any main motion, so you would be severely restricting what you could actually do.
So would you suggest I start with, from the floor, before we get to what staff report? I like that idea. So what the clerk has suggested, and if there's no serious objection, we would deal with suggestions based on what the input. Councillor Geisens, I'd be delighted to start with you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what I want to put on the floor, and the Titan trailers, I think he had some problems as to the land that is actually south, I believe, of number 3. I'm suggesting that there really is no change in what Titan has, and there's nothing to be made different. So I'd like to make sure that we have that. We keep talking about we have no, our young people aren't here anymore because there's no jobs, and we have people who actually create jobs, and I think we should be working hard to make sure that these things get done. We have some others that we may have to talk about, but right now I think it needs to be clear to Triton Trailers that they are not going to have any of their industrial land taken away. Thank you. I'll make the motion.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that, does this relate to that exactly? I'll get right to you here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess there are a couple choices for council with regards to Cortland, because there was some land that is industrial currently that council could take out and make agricultural, and that's the kind of the draft motion that I have there for you, Mr. Mayor, is to do that. But I mean, council could obviously make a decision to not do that also.
So if I hear you correctly, in order to rezone or to keep the south side industrial,
That is correct.
the clerk has suggested that in his motion here that Cortland urban areas be adjusted by removing areas 1, 2, and 5 from the options presented in the staff report, and that these lands be designated agricultural. Is that what you're looking for?
That's what I'm looking for, but we're not going to take all of number 5. There's only a small section of number 5. It's about 5.2 hectares, and that may be some land that Mr. Clofer actually owns. I'm not 100% certain, but I guess if I listen to staff, they have talked to all these people, and they're not against the ones that we are actually talking about. We're talking about actually 5 and number 2, which is north of the number 3 highway. Past the I guess it's a ditch that runs through there.
So we'd want to have this to say by removing areas 1, 2, and part of area 5?
Part of 5 and 2 as well.
But not 1.
2 is 7.43 hectares and 5 is 2 hectares.
And you don't want 1. Yeah, I'm just looking to get the wording correct.
I have a real problem. I guess the other thing we have to do it, because if we don't, it'll take another 6 months before we get anywhere. So theoretically, I think that we can work on it afterwards and get basically that, as far as I'm concerned, that is very important for my area anyway, that But if we can get this through and we can continue to work on that number 2 and number 5 to get that back into where it should be.
So you want to remove Area 2 and part of Area 5?
That's correct.
Not, you remove 1 from here, okay. Thank you. So Councillor Geisen says move that, I'll need a seconder. Councillor Oliver. Motion moved by Geisen, second by Oliver, that the Cortland urban areas be adjusted by removing Area 2 and part of Area 5 from the options presented in the staff report, and that these lands be designated back to agricultural. You're okay with that? Sounds like it'll do the job. Discussion on this motion. Councillor Black, and then Oliver.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Geisens, it's important to you, and it's important to me, and I'm sure it's important to everyone around this table. And through you, Mr. Mayor, and it's so important, I want to make sure that we're doing it right, and we've got the motion right, and therefore I'd like to ask staff if this will work.
Matt, do you have a comment?
The only thing I would be clear in the motion is that from Area 5, that it's only 2 hectares that's being removed. So that's from the southern end of it. So it's that is clear in the motion.
By removing Area 2 and 2 hectares of Area 5.
Yes.
Thank you. I want to get it right, too.
Yeah, and if
I'll do anything to please the
staff
ministry
are-
to get this done.
if staff feel good with that motion, then I do as well.
Further discussion on this motion. Councillor Sonnenberg.
I'm certainly going to support that. It's obvious we need industry in this county, but I'm going to speak to it from a different angle.
Okay?
The province seems to be paranoid about taking agricultural land out of production. I would like to remind them and anyone else listening, agricultural production increases every year. 100 years ago, if you got 40 bushel of corn to the acre, you were doing well. When I started farming in the 70s, if you got 100 bushel to the acre, you were doing very well. Corn production this year was in excess of 200 bushels to the acre. It increases every year. When I was a teenager driving a combine, if we got 30 bushel of wheat to the acre, that was average. Now it's in excess of 100. Agricultural production is just increasing every year around the world. I was told the other day that one of the biggest ag countries in the world is Holland. Tiny little Holland is light years ahead of the rest of the world in greenhouse development. They can grow crops there that'll feed most of Europe in greenhouses. So let's don't worry about starving to death. We're not about to be starving to death by taking ag land out of production. The increases make up for it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. If you may, could we go to Delhi next, which is the one just after Cortland? Councillor Columbus, I have something here prepared by the clerk. Go ahead.
I'd like to suggest this, that the staff recommended adjustments to the Delhi urban area boundary include the expansion of Scott's 4.5 hectare without removal of industrial land within the urban boundary of Delhi. It went to the OMB, or it went to the, it was approved by this council. The appeal period has gone by. The OMB did not appeal it, so I'm suggesting that they must think it's okay. Your comment from Matt on this.
Matt, should we give up our 2 hectare bargaining chip on this or not? I don't know what the province will think.
Well, I'm not sure what the province will say. They had their chance with the Scots, and they didn't object to that.
So it's in now.
So it's in now. It's actually in. The only thing is that, and it is shown in the draft bylaw before you, it'll be designated protected industrial, the expanded area.
You're the mover, Mr. Columbus? I'll need a seconder.
Being that it's already included, do we have to say anything about it? Or do we just thank them?
Send a thank you card. We don't need to. I guess if they've approved it, we don't need to do anything.
You could delete it from the recommendations.
Thank you.
That resolution.
Thank you.
That would deal with it that way.
Thank you very much. We won't, don't want anybody having a look at our motion and at the ministry and saying, whoops, not going there. What else we got here before we get to the floor? The west edge of Simcoe boundary, you saw the presentation. Well, yes, this is the one south of Highway 3 behind our county garage where the new car dealership is proposed. This is written at the west edge of the Simcoe urban boundary, south of Highway 3 be expanded as included in the OP Amendment 98 and in 1Z 2018. Comments on that? Is that worded properly for us to consider, Matt?
It's my discussion with Mary here is that the draft bylaw that you have here has the urban boundary that includes the future car dealership and the existing county garage. So if you approve the bylaw as in its current form,
Okay, it's
you're
included.
okay. So you don't really have to do anything.
Okay, and I guess we get to the bylaw. If somebody doesn't support that, we'll hear from them, correct? If you're happy with that. And one more here before I turn it over to you fellas. This says that the hamlet boundaries, as included in council's resolutions in June of 2017, be sent to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, be maintained. So this is in our resolutions from last June on the expansion of hamlet boundaries. Matt, I need your guidance. I'm looking at you. We just want to do this right if we can.
We think you have the right resolution there.
You think this is okay?
Let's put those boundaries back into the draft bylaws. Yes.
So it's in the bylaw, so we
Yeah,
don't
that's-
need this.
No, you have to pass that.
Okay, you're okay with the wording? It gives you the discussion. Oh, I need a mover seconder. Oliver Black. Again, Oliver Black, have moved and seconded that the hamlet boundaries, as included in council's resolutions of June 2017, and sent to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, be maintained. Discussion on these. Oliver and then Height.
Mr. Mayor, I think we all felt after the lengthy discussion last summer when we did this, I believe it was summertime, we all felt there was rationale and justification for each of those number of small little adjustments that we made in a whole bunch of hamlets, and we were disappointed when the ministry came back and said, well, we don't think you should do that. And I appreciated Mr. Rowe's comments reminding us of the fact of why and when and how we did it. So I think we should go ahead and include these, and we'll let the chips fall where they may.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I agree that they should stay as well. You know, we've had the residents come here, express their concerns. We heard them out. We made a decision. We need to stand behind that decision. Just the province, really, did they even come to Forestville? I doubt it very much. And we're cleaning up, actually, I think so, on some of these issues. And we're allowing some things to move forward, which, you know, obviously it's not working for us. And maybe that election would come a little sooner, Mr. Mayor.
Any other discussion? Councillor Black.
I think I was confused on this one. So this isn't the ministry's boundaries, this is council's boundaries?
Correct.
So can you take my name off and have another seconder?
Sure.
Because I'm not going to support it. I did support it back then. I did. I thought some minor adjustments wasn't a problem. But now the problem I'm having is doing any major changes to our official plan. I think it will put it in jeopardy of not being accepted by the ministry, and that way being put off for a lengthy period of time. So that's my concern about this.
Further discussion? Councillor Oliver?
Mr. Mayor, I agree with my colleague. I agree with Peter's concern about this. I think we all have it. But this is such an important milestone, I guess, this 5-year review. I think we should be prepared to take our chances on whether they'll either approve it. It's going to take months anyways, probably, even if it is approved. And if they defer or send it back and say, thou shalt change it, and that causes several more months of delays, we will at least have done what we in our minds and in our hearts we thought was the right thing at the time.
Anyone else? You've heard the motion. Those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried. Thank you. I'm just going to continue here. We did have a presentation here as I'm stroking these off my list. We did have a presentation on the Lawrence property, Tisdale Road, Port Dover. Any direction on that? Councillor Wells, please.
Mr. Mayor, and before I put forth a motion, I'd like to congratulate staff and thank them for their efforts. And it may appear that we don't support you, but that's not the case. It's just that we have a difference of opinion, I guess and that doesn't mean that your efforts are not appreciated. Mr. Mayor, with that in mind, I'd like to put forth a motion, if that would be all right. I'd like to put this following motion, that we direct staff to include approximately 16 acres of the Lawrence's property in Dover and place this property in the urban boundary.
Mention Tisdale Road, that's the front.
You can put whatever you want, Tisdale if you wish.
I'll be right with you. I just got to get a mover seconder before we discuss. Do you wish to second it? Then I will do that as soon as I make sure we get the wording correct. Brunton. The Wells has moved, Brunton has seconded that. 16, approximately 16 acres of the Lawrence property in Port Dover on Tisdale Road be placed inside the urban boundary. Councillor Brunton, to the motion, please.
Well, Your Worship, I think it could be a tough one, quite frankly, but I'm prepared to support it. I mean, what do we got to lose, I guess? But I do want staff on the 3 acres to make sure with the development that is taking place there, I think with the exclusion of 1 lot, access can be granted to the 3 acres. And I think that should be considered by staff when they're dealing with that development down there. But because even if we grant the 16 acres, Your Worship, it doesn't mean it's going to develop. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Matt, any comments on this motion wording?
If you're going to approve that motion, I think it would be wise to give us a designation. It's going to go in the urban area. It should be, I guess, appropriate designation would be urban residential, and that should be part of that resolution. Just to give us some more complete direction.
The suggestion, I'm actually going to speak to you, Mr. Van Bush, on behalf of your clients. You heard the consultant to be designated as urban residential to give us more teeth to have this approved. Dover Mills? Dover, if you would, please. It's okay. North Dover Mills neighborhood. Thank you. I'll just go over the wording once more, make sure that I got it. That approximately 16 acres of the Lawrence property in Port Dover and Tisdale Road be placed inside the urban boundary. This is to be included in the North Dover Mills neighborhood planning area to be designated urban residential. Discussion. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I'd like to place an amendment on the motion.
Go ahead.
I would like to have a staff report come back with some more details on a road, possibly a Class EA, to run a road from Tisdale over to Cockshut Road. I spoke with Public Works, and unfortunately, she's not here this evening.
My concern is if we staff report in relation to this official plan, we can't.
Go ahead. We all have to hear this.
Through you,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, my concern is that this is an official plan meeting. If we add a motion to
Amendment.
an amendment to a motion on an official plan, we have to hold another public meeting. This isn't the end of it. We have to come back again for that. So if you could hold that and go through the proper notice of motion process, we'll assist you and we'll get that done for a future meeting, but we'd like to keep it separate from this process.
Okay.
Is that fair? That's just not to delay it. Okay, thank you for that. And there is a channel we can do it without having another public meeting, correct? That's good advice, I think. Any other discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Norfolk Mall, Matt, it's mentioned here in your recommendation in your report. I'm just wondering if we just leave it there for the moment? Okay, and I know that it's based on Oxford's letter, so I'll just leave it in there with the rest of the balance of those recommendations. Okay, we had some other things here. I don't know. We certainly had the lot swap from Mr. Schuyler. Councillor Columbus, please.
Mr. Mayor, I did suggest, being a representative of the Ag Advisory Board, that they put a motion forward, and I just wonder, would it be proper to put that motion on the floor here, Mr. Clerk? To permit lot swaps.
Through you, I'm just looking to planning staff to see how they would like it worded for...
Mr. Schuyler brought forth the motion from the Agricultural Advisory Committee that she read to us. I don't recall it word for word. I got the gist of it. The question is, could we use that as our motion here from council as opposed to the advisory?
On page 105 and 106.
Mr. Mayor, it's on page 17 of our report.
Yes.
When I was at the Agricultural Advisory Board, when Brett brought it forward, it was a well-thought-out resolution and has a lot of whereases and therefore, and so I don't have any issue with the format of this resolution.
Okay.
So, that being, I will put that motion on the floor for a vote, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so put it at the top here. Columbus has moved, seconded by Sonnenberg. And it's before you there on page 105 and 106 of our agenda, correct? Discussion on that. Councillor Black.
Mr. Mayor, through you to planning staff. It seems like we're adding a lot more back that they've already told us that we should take out. Through you to staff, I'm wondering, this process, once we've completed and hopefully adopted this plan in whatever format, the procedure is that it must go to the ministry once again for their review. So the risk is that they might look at it and say, okay, or since they said already no, they'll send it back to us. And at that time, do we need another public meeting? Or what happens at that point when they send it back to us and instruct us to remove things?
haven't been involved in an official plan amendment that had as many issues relating to the province as this one, but my understanding is that they can approve it and then ignore all their comments. That's one option. It's not likely. They can approve, ask or direct modifications to the plan, and in the areas, and so that could be mapping changes, it could be text changes. They could send all or part of the plan back, say, have another look, it's not acceptable, and or perhaps in specific areas, because there's a lot of areas in the plan I don't think they really have a problem with. They could ask for council to come back and reconsider specific areas of the plan and come up with possible solutions or options for them to consider. So there'll be likely a give and take at that point. And ultimately, though, the province has the approval authority, and if council still doesn't like what's been approved, it can take the province to the Ontario Municipal Board and appeal that decision.
So, and how much time will we have to extend this whole process by the back and forth?
Well, we've been told, we asked them how long is their review process going to take. They told us 6 months. It does go to all the various ministries again. You know, they have another look at it, Conservation Authority as well. So that process will take 6 months, and then
back to us again?
Yeah, that will take I guess 6 months, maybe another. We might be a year from now doing this thing. I don't know how long that give and take process will take. I can't really put a number on it, but it could take, unless they just directly modify the plan and not negotiate. So there's so many options.
Right. But no more public meetings?
Not that I am aware of, no. The public will have, if they're not satisfied with a decision, the final decision that the province makes, they have the right of appeal as well. There will be a notice of decision that will be published, and people will be notified, and they do have that right. So let's say if they reject a hamlet boundary expansion, the persons involved can appeal that decision to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on the motion? Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Yes. The lot swap. A couple more I have here, if you stay with me. Kristen, I remember, gave us spoke on the parkland/storm pond being brought possibly into the urban boundary on the west side where the MacArthur development was. Any direction on that? Councillor Brunton?
Well, I do recall looking at that drawing, but my question is to staff. How do they look at that one again? Perhaps, Mary, you could answer.
Mary, what's your thoughts on that? And we know that it was approved a few years ago outside of the boundary, the pond.
It started with an application that was a swap. The land at the road frontage was to come out of the urban area so that they could put in Westwood trails. So it was an equal amount of land that went out and went back in.
Remember that. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you bring that back up on the screen?
Sorry, I can't. It was on the disc.
It was hers.
All
Yeah.
right.
Sorry.
Well, there was a bigger.
So the pond, not the pond, the park has always been there. It's where it is. That's the property. It's quite a hill, and it's got a lot of trees to it. it's been like that for quite a while. I think something was added to that park, but it was way before my time.
Well, there was a big chunk of land
The
west of that.
The stormwater pond itself, I was quite surprised when they went to develop the condominium, they came in with a proposal to put the storm pond outside of the urban area,
Is that a
which
problem?
is not a normal thing. Our official plan policies, Matt can correct me, but I believe they are going to state specifically that your development includes your stormwater pond, if that's what you're applying for with council. So that policy has been tightened and clarified in the draft official plan, and Matt's confirming that with me now. So it wasn't specific in the plan, so yes, they did get approval to have their stormwater management pond outside, and there was also one in Waterford that got the same sort of approval.
So it has been approved,
Yes,
outside of the urban boundary?
yes.
Okay, and what about, I know there's a chunk to the south, outside the urban boundary, and a big piece, is there not a big piece on the west side that's, they want to add to the urban boundary still?
So right where Chris was just pointing, that particular area, the owners have asked to have it included in the urban area, but we didn't have a report that said that we had that much growth that we needed to add to our urban areas, so we didn't. And as far as the part to the north on McCarthy's property, that has not been considered in this official plan again for inclusion because our population and employment study didn't show the need, the residential
Right.
land supply didn't show the need, so that's where that's at.
And that piece to the very west would be very hard to develop, I would think, I think if they're going to have to pump everything back in, when they're not, like sanitary and all that, so service-wise. So that's all been considered already then, eh? Like, I guess I'm looking for what we should do with this, and I have my own thoughts, but I don't know what the rest of the council thinks, so thank you.
Mary, if I may, my recollection was the swap that was done previously was the property that to the north that butted on West Street. That was in the
Correct,
urban
Mr.
boundary.
Mayor,
That was
yes.
swapped.
Yes.
So that was swapped, and then despite that, and I don't mean anything negative here, but despite that, the retention pond was still decided to be put outside the boundary.
Yes, it was,
Yes,
sir.
it was, okay. So, any movement on that? Okay, well, I'll leave that. Yeah, Councillor Oliver?
Mr. Mayor, just from a housekeeping perspective, as we look at the map, it's one of these scenarios, at least in my opinion, where I saw the merit of what she was suggesting. I don't imagine it would allow them to develop any more land or anything like that. It would just be a matter of squaring off our urban boundary. Is it as simple as that?
Any thoughts on that, planning staff?
The park area wouldn't be adding residential development. The storm water management pond would not be adding any development potential. But as soon as you go outside of that area, you are adding potential to develop. Although, as has been mentioned, it is quite a bit lower, it'd be pretty challenging to service it, but perhaps it would be an area that would end up with private servicing. So I think there is development potential there. There's quite a few acres.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, well, I'll leave that one for a moment for you to think. Yeah, go ahead. Your microphone, please.
Are staff prepared to give us some idea what their thoughts are on that? I'm a little unfamiliar with the background. I remember the lots, or the lot swap, kind of got down, the swap for the urban residential from the outside the urban boundary, but I'm just wondering, so you're saying the piece to the immediate west is not been considered, and that was done in a previous report? Am I clear on that?
Through the mayor, what I was saying was that swap to permit Westwood Acres was done through a planning application when we developed the first plan, or very near to the first Norfolk County official plan.
There is, Councillor Brunton, there is development potential on that lot right now, but it would just be for a single residential
Yes.
But you're correct, because of the elevation, the servicing, that would be a challenge.
Okay, so,
With no development application before us for that property, it would be premature at this point to simply fold it in.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Just to finish up on my list, Mike, Mr. Bradfield was the last speaker, gave us an update, no direction there. Before him, Mike gave us a talk about Hastings Drive. I can't remember if he had anything specific, Mike, or not. No, I don't believe he did, just that. That one was, Kristen, was that one we've just dealt with. John Armstrong, speaker number 7, I think he liked us. He said some nice things, and he wasn't, I think he was speaking neutral to the zoning, so there was no request there that I'm aware of. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was there? Go ahead. I didn't catch it, if there was.
Urban design guidelines. He wanted some kind of inclusion of urban design guidelines, and I think the plan is fairly limited in that regard, but could ask staff to comment on that.
Yeah, would you please? Thank you. I didn't catch everything, so.
There are, Mr. Mayor, there are some policies in the official plan relating to community design. In section, well, in the current section 7, there is already some existing policies on community design. Through this amendment, we're moving that forward in the plan, but we're adding to that policy. We're adding policies relating to neighborhood design, policies that had applied just to the Lakeshore Secondary Plan. We're making county-wide. So there are policies there. If council wishes to do an urban design manual or a guideline document, it can certainly go ahead and do that at any time that it feels it's appropriate.
And if I could confirm, Mr. Mayor, our manager has been looking for opportunity to do it. It's just a matter of staff time. So it's something we have in the future, but we haven't been able to get to it.
Okay. Mary Weber, and Speaker 5, talked about the shoreline and lakeshore and hazard land. I don't believe there was anything specifically. Tell me if you think. I don't believe there was. Speaker 3 was Mr. Rowe. He certainly talked about urban boundaries in Cortland and tight trailers, and I believe we've dealt with that. Is that fair, David? Thank you, sir. Nathan Colomea, I got two left, and Nathan Colomea, Speaker 2. I can't remember. Help me here. Thank you. I'm glad your memory's better than mine. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, was one of the comments from LPRCA around this 50-meter expansion?
Yes.
50 square meters, and I've looked at this one closely, talked to Mary out during the breaks, and while I think we all sort of understood where he's coming from, the fact that both wording options were 50 square meter additions, whether it's relative to the foundation or relative to the usable floor area, in one sense is a moot point. So I came here all revved up thinking I was going to ask us to go back to the original wording, i.e. relative to the foundation. But based on what I've been told by staff, I for one am comfortable with that. I know Councillor Heidt had some views about that as well, and whether we want to go back, I'd support it either way. But that's what he was speaking to us about, was that idea.
Any other comments on that? You're right. It was the usable floor area and the 50 meters, yeah. You're okay with that for now? Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else on that one? And last but not least, certainly our first speaker was Alan Boyce and talked about Hastings and OMB. There was nothing specific there. And we will go to the recommendations on page 89. Yes. Oh, yes, and anything else, please, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to get clarification on one point, and then I do want to put another one forward.
Okay, well, let's do that now.
The other point from the LPRCA comments and the ministry was with respect to that paragraph that talked about replacement or redevelopment. and our wording had been proposed to be completely deleted, but then LPRCA recommended wording, and I just want to ask staff, is the draft that the motion will deal with, does it incorporate that LPRCA wording? In other words, replacement or redevelopment may be permitted subject to policy 7.3.2.2. Is that in there, or do we need a motion to that effect to make sure it gets back in?
There should be a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
In here.
should-
need a motion.
You need one, sir.
Our clerk's way ahead of me, I'll tell you. Councillor Oliver, I'll read this. That section 6.8.3 Long Point, Turkey Point Resort Area Safe Access Policy be amended by revising the fourth paragraph in section 6.8.3 to read as follows. Redevelopment or replacement of existing development may be permitted subject to the provisions of section 7322, hazard land designation of this plan.
Yes.
Okay, and you'll move that?
I will.
I'll need a seconder to put it on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wells, discussion on this motion. Councillor Black, go ahead, please.
I saw Matt's hand.
Matt, did somebody see your hand?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Before this meeting, we were counting the paragraphs in that section, and I think it's actually paragraph 5. So it's the Long Point Conservation Authority referred to it as paragraph 4, but it's actually paragraph 5.
I'll change fourth
And-
paragraph to the fifth. Might as well get the right paragraph.
The other one that we had talked about as adding is paragraph 5. It's actually paragraph 6.
Okay. Councillor Broughton to the motion.
I want some clarification on the access egress issue. Like, they told us our access egress clause was no good, correct? They said it was not acceptable.
It's acceptable. The problem is it doesn't do what council wants it to do. Council, my understanding, when it directed that policy be put into the plan, wanted some flexibility in those two areas to allow minor development, redevelopment, and that kind of thing. But it was based on safe access. The safe access is a problem for that entire area. So if development and redevelopment hinges on safe access, you can't have any. So that's why we're recommending that wording be taken out and you rely on the policies you already have in the official plan, in the hazard land policies, which gives some, there are conditions attached to it in terms of floodproofing and size and all that, but it does give some options and some flexibility to allow some development and redevelopment.
So leave it out.
Pardon?
Leave the clause out.
Keep the safe access clause out of that paragraph.
Okay, and that's the one we made up sometime
Yes,
ago. Okay,
yes.
I
Okay,
got you.
any other questions or comments? Councillor Black, then Height.
Through you to staff, could you just please explain the difference between what we're moving and what was presented?
The wording that we have in the report is that redevelopment or replacement of existing development may be permitted subject to provisions of section 7322 hazard land designation of this plan. And the previous resolution that council directed had in that clause, it had the word notwithstanding the floodplain policies, given safe access, redevelopment, and development could occur in those two areas. So that resolution was problematic, and this resolution that's in the report, I think, deals better with what council's intention was.
Councillor Height.